Dear students, I welcome you to the lecture series on cybersecurity. Today, we are going to discuss the basic concepts in computer security, the challenges faced, program security, and various mechanisms adopted to protect data in a computer. So, to start with, what is computer security? This is the most basic question. Let us define it. Computer security is the protection afforded to an automated information system in order to attain the applicable objectives of preserving the integrity, availability, and confidentiality of information system resources. Integrity assures that information and programs are changed only in a specified and authorized manner. Availability assures that systems work promptly and service is not denied to the authorized users. A loss of availability is the disruption of access to use of information or an information system, and confidentiality assures that private or confidential information is not made available or disclosed to unauthorized individuals. These three concepts form what is often referred to as the CIA triad, where C stands for confidentiality, I for integrity, and A for availability. Although the use of the CIA triad to define security objectives is well established, some in the security field feel that additional concepts are needed to present a complete picture. Two of the most commonly used concepts are authenticity and accountability. Authenticity is the property of being genuine and being able to be verified and trusted. Confidence in the validity of a transmission, a message, or message originator. This means verifying that users are who they say they are and that each input arriving at the system came from a trusted source. Accountability ensures that the entity that generates some actions should be uniquely traced. This supports non-repudiation, deterrence, fault isolation, intrusion detection and prevention, and after action recovery and legal action. Because truly secure systems are not yet an achievable goal, we must be able to trace a security breach to a responsible party. Systems must keep records of their activities to permit later forensic analysis to trace security breaches or to aid in transaction disputes. If the computer is not secured, it may have adverse effect on the system, ranging from low level impact to high level impact. In case of low level, the loss could be expected to have a limited adverse effect on organizational operations, organizational assets, or individuals. A limited adverse effect means that, for example, the loss of confidentiality, integrity, or availability might cause number 1, a degradation in mission capability to an extent and duration that the organization is able to perform its primary functions, but the effectiveness of the functions is noticeably reduced. Number 2, result in minor damage to organizational assets. Number 3, result in minor financial loss, or number 4, result in minor harm to individuals. In case of moderate level, the loss could be expected to have a serious adverse effect on organizational operations, organizational assets, or individuals. A serious adverse effect means that, for example, the loss might cause a significant degradation in mission capability to an extent and duration that the organization is able to perform its primary functions, but the effectiveness of the functions is significantly reduced. Number 2, it results in significant damage to organizational assets. Number 3, it results in significant financial loss, or number 4, it results in significant harm to individuals that does not involve loss of life or serious life threatening injuries. In case of high level, the loss could be expected to have a severe or catastrophic adverse effect on organizational operations, organizational assets or individuals. A severe or catastrophic adverse effect means that, for example, the loss might cause number 1, a severe degradation in or loss of mission capability to an extent and duration that the organization is not able to perform one or more of its primary functions. Number 2, it results in major damage to organizational assets. Number 3, it results in major financial loss, or number 4, it results in severe or catastrophic harm to individuals involving loss of life or serious life threatening injuries. The challenges of computer security and network security is both fascinating and complex. Some of the reasons are: number 1, security is not as simple as it might first appear to the novice. The requirements seem to be straightforward. Indeed, most of the major requirements for security services can be given self-explanatory one-word labels such as confidentiality, authentication, non-repudiation or integrity. But the mechanisms used to meet those requirements can be quite complex, and understanding them may involve rather subtle reasoning. Number 2, in developing a particular security mechanism or algorithm, one must always consider potential attacks on those security features. In many cases, successful attacks are designed by looking at the problem in a completely different way, therefore exploiting an unexpected weakness in the mechanism. Number 3, having designed various security mechanisms, it is necessary to decide where to use them. Number 4, security mechanisms typically involve more than a particular algorithm or protocol. They also require that the participants be in possession of some secret information, for example, an encryption key, which raises questions about the creation, distribution and protection of that secret information. There are also maybe a reliance on communication protocols whose behavior may complicate the task of developing the security mechanism. For example, if the proper functioning of the security mechanism requires setting time limits on the transit time of a message from the sender to the receiver, then any protocol or network that introduces variable unpredictable delays may render such time limit meaningless. Number 5, computer and network security is essentially a battle of wits between a perpetrator who tries to find holes and the designer or administrator who tries to close them. The great advantage that the attacker has is that he or she need only find a single weakness, while the designer must find and eliminate all weaknesses to achieve perfect security. Number 6, there is a natural tendency on the part of users and system managers to perceive little benefit from security investment until a security failure occurs. Number 7, security requires regular, even constant monitoring, and this is difficult in today's short-term overloaded environment. Number 8, security is still too often an afterthought to be incorporated into a system after the design is complete, rather than being an integral part of the design process. Number 9, many users and even security administrators view strongly security as an impediment to efficient and user friendly operation of an information system or use of information. So, until now we have learned about the need for computer security. Now, we begin to study how to apply security in computing. We start with why we need security at the program level and how we can achieve it. In one form or another, protecting programs is at the heart of computer security. So, we need to ask two important questions. Number one, how do we keep programs free from flaws? Number two, how do we protect computing resources against programs that contains flaws? Consider what we mean when we say that a program is secure. We saw that security implies some degree of trust that the program enforces expected confidentiality, integrity and availability. From the point of view of a program or a programmer, how can we look at a software component or code fragment and assess its security? This question is, of course, similar to the problem of assessing software quality in general. One way to assess security or quality is to ask people to name the characteristics of the software that contribute to its overall security. However, we are likely to get different answers from different people. This difference occurs because the importance of the characteristics depend on who is analyzing the software. For example, one person may decide that code is secure because it takes too long to break through its security controls, and someone else may decide code is secure if it has run for a period of time with no apparent failures. But a third person may decide that any potential fault in meeting security requirements makes code insecure. An assessment of security can also be influenced by someone's general perspective on software quality. For example, if your manager's idea of quality is conformance to specifications, then she might consider the code secure if it meets security requirements, whether or not the requirements are complete or correct. This security view played a role when a major computer manufacturer delivered all its machines with keyed locks, since a keyed lock was written in the requirements. But the machines were not secure because all locks were configured to use the same key. Thus, another view of security is fitness for purpose. In this view, the manufacturer clearly had room for improvement. In general, practitioners often look at quantity and types of faults for evidence of a product's quality or lack of it. For example, developers track the number of faults found in the requirements, design and code inspections and use them as indicators of the likely quality of the final product. One approach to judging quality in security has been fixing faults. You might argue that a module in which 100 faults were discovered and fixed is better than another in which only 20 faults were discovered and fixed, suggesting that more rigorous analysis and testing had led to the finding of the larger number of faults. A piece of software with 100 discovered faults is inherently full of problems and could clearly have 100 more waiting to appear. A software that has many faults early on is likely to have many others still waiting to be found. Early work in computer security was based on the paradigm of penetrate and patch, in which analysts searched for and repaired faults. The inadequacies of penetrate and patch led researchers to seek a better way to be confident that code meets its security requirements. One way to do that is to compare the requirements with the behavior, that is, to understand program security, we can examine programs to see whether they behave as their designers intended or users expected. We call such unexpected behavior a program security flaw. It is inappropriate program behavior caused by a program vulnerability. There is no direct mapping of the terms vulnerability and flaw into the characterization of faults and failures. A flaw can either be a fault or failure, and vulnerability usually describes a class of flaws such as butter overflow. In spite of the inconsistency, it is important for us to remember that we must view vulnerabilities and flaws from two perspectives, cause and effect, so that we see what fault caused the problem and what failure, if any, is visible to the user. For example, a Trojan horse may have been injected in a piece of code, a flaw exploiting a vulnerability, but the user may not yet have seen the Trojan horse malicious behavior. Thus, we must address program security flaws from inside and outside to find causes not only of existing failures, but also of incipient ones. Moreover, it is not enough to identify these problems. We must also determine how to prevent harm caused by possible flaws. Program security flaws can derive from any kind of software fault, that is, they cover everything from a misunderstanding of program requirements to a one character error in coding or even typing. The flaws can result from problems in a single code component or from the failure of several programs or program pieces to interact compatibly through a shared interface. The security flaws can reflect code that was intentionally designed or coded to be malicious, or code that was simply developed in a sloppy or misguided way. Thus, it makes sense to divide program flaws into two separate logical categories: inadvertent human errors versus malicious intentionally induced flaws. Regrettably, we do not have techniques to eliminate or address all program security flaws. There are two reasons for this distressing situation. Number one, program controls apply at the level of the individual program and programmer. When we test a system, we try to make sure that the functionality prescribed in the requirements is implemented in the code. That is, we take a should do checklist and verify that the code does what it is supposed to do. However, security is also about preventing certain actions such as shouldn't do list. It is almost impossible to ensure that a program does precisely what its designer or user intended and nothing more. Regardless of designer or programmer intent, in a large and complex system, the number of pieces that have to fit together properly interact in an unmanageably large number of ways. We are forced to examine and test the code for typical or likely cases. We cannot exhaustively test every state and data combination to verify a system's behavior. So, sheer size and complexity preclude total flaw prevention or mediation. Programmers intending to implant malicious code can take advantage of this incompleteness and hide some flaws successfully despite our best efforts. Number two, programming and software engineering techniques change and evolve far more rapidly than do computer security techniques. So, we often find ourselves trying to secure last year's technology while software developers are rapidly adopting today's and next year's technology. Still, the situation is far from bleak. Computer security has much to offer to program security. By understanding what can go wrong and how to protect against it, we can devise techniques and tools to secure most computer applications. Being human, programmers and other developers make many mistakes, most of which are unintentional and non-malicious. Many such errors cause program malfunctions but do not lead to more serious security vulnerabilities. However, a few classes of errors have plagued programmers and security professionals for decades, and there is no reason to believe they will disappear. There are classic error types that have enabled many recent security breaches, such as buffer overflow. A buffer is a space in which data can be held. A buffer resides in memory. Because memory is finite, a buffer's capacity is finite. For this reason, in many programming languages, the programmer must decide the buffer's maximum size so that the compiler can set aside that amount of space. Let us look at an example to see how buffer overflow happens. Suppose a C language program contains the declaration character sample with size 10. The compiler set aside 10 bytes to store this buffer, 1 byte for each of the 10 elements of the array, sample 0 through sample 9. Now we execute the statement sample 10 is equal to A. The subscript is out of bounds, that is, it does not fall between 0 and 9, so we have a problem. The nicest outcome from a security perspective is for the compiler to detect the problem and mark the error during compilation. There are some programs that we call malicious code that can affect a program. By themselves, programs are seldom security threats. The programs operate on data, taking action only when data and state changes trigger it. Much of the work done by a program is invisible to users, so they are not likely to be aware of any malicious activity. For instance, when was the last time you saw a bit? Do you know in what form a document file is stored? If you know a document resides somewhere on a disk, can you find it? Can you tell if a game program does anything in addition to its expected interaction with you? Which files are modified by a word processor when you create a document? Most users cannot answer these questions. However, since computer data are not usually seen directly by users, malicious people can make programs serve as vehicles to access and change data and other programs. Malicious code can do anything any other program can, such as writing a message on a computer screen, stopping a running program, generating a sound, or erasing a stored file. Or malicious code can do nothing at all right now. It can be planted to lie dormant, undetected, until some event triggers the code to act. The trigger can be a time or date, an interval, for example after 30 minutes, an event, for example when a particular program is executed, a condition, for example when communication occurs on a modem, a count, for example the 5th time something happens, some combination of these, or a random situation. In fact, malicious code can do different things each time or nothing most of the time with something dramatic on occasion. Malicious code runs under the user's authority. Thus, malicious code can touch everything the user can touch, and in the same ways. Users typically have complete control over their own program code and data files. They can read, write, modify, append, and even delete them. And well, they should. But malicious code can do the same without the user's permission or even knowledge. Now, let us see various kinds of malicious code, but before that, let us look at the technical definition of malicious code. Malicious code, or a rogue program, is a general name for unanticipated or undesired effects in programs or program parts caused by an agent intent on damage. This definition eliminates unintentional errors, although they can also have a serious negative effect. This definition also excludes coincidence, in which two benign programs combine for a negative effect. The agent is the writer of the program or the person who causes its distribution. By this definition, most faults found in software inspections, reviews and testing do not qualify as malicious code, because we think of them as unintentional. Now, coming on to the kinds of malicious codes, let us begin with virus. A virus is a program that can pass on malicious code to other non-malicious programs by modifying them. A virus can be either transient or resident. A transient virus has a life that depends on the life of its host. The virus runs when its attached program executes and terminates when its attached programs end. During its execution, the transient virus may have spread its infection to other programs. A resident virus locates itself in memory. Then it can remain active or be activated as a standalone program even after its attached program ends. It is very important to know how viruses attach. Let us see how. A printed copy of a virus does nothing and threatens no one. Even executable virus code sitting on a disk does nothing. What triggers a virus to start replicating? For a virus to do its malicious work and spread itself, it must be activated by being executed. Fortunately for virus writers, but unfortunately for the rest of us, there are many ways to ensure that the programs will be executed on a running computer. For example, recall the setup program that you initiate on your computer. It may call dozens or hundreds of other programs, some on the distribution medium, some already residing on the computer, some in memory. If any of these programs contain a virus, the virus code could be activated. Let us see how. Suppose the virus code were in a program on the distribution medium such as CD. When executed, the virus could install itself on a permanent storage medium, typically a hard disk, and also in any and all executing programs in memory. Human intervention is necessary to start the process. A human being puts the virus on the distribution medium, and perhaps another initiates the execution of the program to which the virus is attached. It is possible for execution to occur without human intervention, though, such as when execution is triggered by a date or the passage of a certain amount of time. After that, no human intervention is needed. The virus can spread by itself. A more common means of virus activation is an attachment to an email message. In this attack, the virus writer tries to convince the victim, the recipient of an email message, to open the attachment. Once the viral attachment is opened, the activated virus can do its work. Some modern email handlers, in a drive to help the receiver, the victim, will automatically open attachments as soon as the receiver opens the body of the email message. The virus can be executable code embedded in an executable attachment, but other types of files are equally dangerous. There are other kind of malicious codes such as Trojan horse, worm, logic bombs and trapdoors, etc., which will be discussed in other lectures. Now, let us see various security mechanisms that can secure our data. First one is disk encryption. Disk encryption refers to the encryption technology that encrypts data on a hard disk drive. Disk encryption typically takes form in either software or hardware. Disk encryption is often referred to as the on-fly encryption or transparent encryption. Next is backups. Backups are used to ensure data which is lost can be recovered from another source. it is considered essential to keep a backup of any data in most industries, and the process is recommended for any files of importance to a user. Then comes data masking. Data masking of structured data is the process of obscuring, that is masking, specific data within a database table or cell to ensure that data security is maintained and sensitive information is not exposed to unauthorized personnel. This may include masking the data from users. For example, so banking customer representatives can only see the last 4 digits of a customer's national identity number. Developers who need real production data to test new software releases, but should not be able to see sensitive financial data, or the outsourcing vendors, etc. Then we have data erasure. Data erasure is a method of software based overwriting that completely destroys all electronic data residing on a hard drive or other digital media to ensure that no sensitive data is leaked when an asset is retired or reused. Apart from these, we can use good antivirus program for safeguarding our data. So, with this, our today's lecture is over. Finally, concluding, we have learned what is computer security, various factors affecting it, the challenges that are faced, and also we have learned about non-malicious and malicious codes such as virus and how to protect our data against these threats. Hope you have understood the basic concepts. See you in the next lecture. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice day. Thank you.